What's up, guys? Welcome into the Fantasy Life live stream. My name is Matt LaMarca, and we're going to be doing a trio of fantasy playoff contest breakdowns today. We're going to do a couple of drafts for you. We're going to talk a bunch of strategy. Should be a good time. And I am joined today by none other than Mr. Adam Ronis. You can find Adam, of course, on the Sirius XM channel for Fantasy Life. He does a lot of great stuff for us there. His work is also on the website. Adam, how's it going?
It's going well. An exciting time right now. We got the NFL playoffs getting set to kick off tomorrow in what looks like a wide open playoffs. We don't really have a clear cut favorite. So it makes these contests more exciting. It gives you different builds that potentially can win it. And we'll see if we get a surprise entrant into the Super Bowl. It kind of feels like that this year, that there could be multiple teams that make a run. And that's why it makes these playoff contests so different, unique, and exciting this year, because usually in the past we kind of know who's going to the Super Bowl. It's only a handful of teams. I think you could make a case for multiple teams this year. So it does make the puzzle that we're trying to put together a lot more challenging this season.
And like you said, it opens up a lot of different avenues. I was looking at the odds specifically to win the AFC the other day, and there are five teams priced roughly between plus 250 and plus 500. So the AFC in particular just feels wide open. You know, the Broncos, obviously, they're the number one seed, Patriots, Jaguars, Texans, and the Bills, of course. Like it wouldn't be a huge shock to see any of those five teams represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I'd be a little bit more surprised if it was the Chargers or the Steelers, but still feels like we've got more teams than usual available.
Yeah, you're right. The AFC is definitely more wide open. I don't think anyone is picking the Steelers.
Yeah.
The Chargers, yeah, it's obviously they have some talent. They have a lot of talent, but is that offensive line going to be able to protect Herbert in the postseason? And then the other five, as you mentioned, what's crazy is you have Jacksonville and Buffalo, and they play each other in the first round. So you have a lot of people that think Jacksonville can make a deep run because of the way they have played down the stretch and the way Trevor Lawrence has grasped the Liam Cohen offense and how it's just clicking. And then Buffalo, who people feel, all right, Josh Allen finally has no Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow to deal with. This is his time. But it's also a Buffalo team that hasn't been as good as recent seasons and definitely have some concerns. You know, who's the go-to guy in the passing game? They've had some injuries on the defensive side. So that first round matchup is really key, because I do think there are people that have Jacksonville going far, others have Buffalo going far, and clearly one of them will be eliminated this week in making your bracket or the players you draft uh, irrelevant after this weekend, or giving you a much more daunting challenge to try and win these contests.
Like one of the key games in round one. Sort of Bears, Packers would be another one, but Bills, Jaguars, I've kind of been surprised at how many people I've heard picking Jacksonville. And I totally get it. I like Jacksonville in that game. I just thought that they would be a little bit more contrarian. I feel like I've almost heard more people pick Jacksonville than Buffalo, even though Buffalo is technically the betting favorite in that game.
Yeah, I see it going back and forth. And I even see people when they're trying to select, they go, yeah, one day I'm on Buffalo, one day I'm on Jacksonville. So they're kind of hedging back and forth. And yeah, I'm more on the Jacksonville side right now, too. But I think you would agree we would not be surprised one bit if Buffalo
Oh, no.
wins. And
Yeah,
then if they do,
absolutely.
here's the thing: if Buffalo wins, I think they have a really good shot to go to the Super Bowl. I think this might be their toughest matchup in the AFC bracket, actually.
So I wrote an article for Fantasy Life a few days ago talking about teams that I viewed as sort of undervalued in these contests. Jacksonville was one of them. Houston was another. I think Houston, they're 3-point favorites this week against the Steelers. I think they can win that game. And then, they would likely have to go to Denver. I don't think that's like the scariest matchup in the world. So those were my two AFC picks. And then in the NFC, I do think it's a bit more top heavy, but I kind of like the Eagles. I think their defense is peaking sort of at the right time. They're getting healthier. Jalen Carter returning was a big deal for them. Do you have a feel for, sort of the big three NFC teams, the Eagles, the Rams, the Seahawks? Do you have a preference one way or the other on those?
Yeah, my preference is the Rams.
Yeah.
I know they've not been great lately, but getting Devontae Adams back is huge. They have Matthew Stafford, a quarterback with experience. They came close to beating the Eagles last year. If it wasn't for the potential weather situation, maybe they pull that game out. So I think the Rams are the most complete team. I do see the Eagles potentially making a run. I think a lot of people are off them too, just because it hasn't been a picturesque season. Their offense has struggled at times, but they have one of the top defenses. They've been there before. They're the defending champs. It doesn't feel like it because the way people talk about the Eagles, you forget that they actually won the Super Bowl last year because it hasn't been the most smooth path this season, but they have all the ability to make a deep run. And then with Seattle, their defense is good. They have all the ingredients. I think the one thing that still prevents me from going all in on them is Sam Darnold just in a big spot. And you could say, well, he just had a big win against San Francisco, but he didn't need to do much in that game. And he did make some throws that potentially could have led to turnovers. Uh, he didn't turn it over. You give him credit for that, but I still think there is concern when you need to lean on Sam Darnold. Can he get the job done? And I still have questions about that.
Very reasonable to still have questions. If you look at that Rams game, right, the things that broke well for Seattle, they had a punt return touchdown. They had a successful 2-point conversion that was, a stoink off a guy's helmet that was initially ruled a forward pass, then ruled a backwards pass. And you had the Rams kicker missing a game-winning field goal attempt down the stretch there. So, like, even though Seattle won that game, it felt very much fluky. I certainly think, they're the best team. I do like, for the Eagles side of things, the fact that they probably will only have to face one of those teams, right? The Rams and the Seahawks being the 1 and the 5 seed, more than likely that they meet up in the second round, while Philly could get a slightly easier road going up against Chicago.
Yeah, I don't have Chicago winning though.
Mm,
So I actually have Rams Eagles in the
okay.
second round. So that's uh that's why I have the Rams advancing. But I did do a draft for Sirius XM today, and I went heavy Eagles, but that's because I had pick four. It was four teams,
Hmm.
and that's the one thing too. You have to understand when you're doing these drafts, you can go in, you could have your Super Bowl teams, but other people might have the same. You have to pivot then, because I don't think you can spread out the risk in these type of drafts. You have to make a stance. And look, that stance can get you eliminated. Like, say, for example, the draft's going along. You're like, all right, well, this is not my Super Bowl, but I'm going to stack Eagles, Jacksonville. Then both teams go out this weekend. You're done. But I don't think you can spread it out and cherry pick and go, oh, let me get one player from Jacksonville, one from Philly. That's not going to work because you're
Yes.
not going to accumulate enough points. So you kind of have to make a stance.
Yeah, let's dive into the contest here, and I'll put the board up on screen. Ronis, you were lucky enough, or unlucky enough,
Yeah,
I
we'll
guess,
find
depending
out.
on how you look at it. But you secured the number one overall pick, and I have yet to do a draft, regardless of the format, where Puka Nakua is not the first overall pick. So, is that trend going to be continuing? I assume it is, based on what you just said about the Rams.
Yeah, I really thought about going different and trying something unique, but I do have the Rams going to the Super Bowl, which means they play four games. The problem is I'm not going to be able to stack them because I'm pretty sure three players from the Rams will be gone by the time I come back in round two. So I'll just take the best player who's getting massive volume, who I expect to play four games. And then just I'm gonna have to pivot in a different direction though when it comes back to me. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with Puka. I know it's chalk, but again, he's just you're going to get a high floor. I mean, the down game for Puka is like 6 for 70.
Yeah.
It's 13 points in a PPR. Now, Devontae Adams being back does take away a little bit from the touchdown equity because we see Devontae Adams gets a ton of targets in the red zone. He had 14 touchdowns this year on 60 catches. Like, that is insane. It's like every time they're inside the 10, inside the 5, oh, Devontae Adams, yeah, we're gonna throw it to you. And look, you can't really knock it because Adams was successful. And
Yep.
I do think he's healthy. It looked like if you watch the pregame before their final game, he was running pretty well. And I think they were being cautious holding him out, which was the smart decision. So I think he'll be good to go. But yeah, I'll stick with Puka.
Yeah, and I think that's the right call. I mean, you want to maximize games played in these, And if you had to pick a team that you feel most confident about getting 4 games out of, it's clearly the Rams. They're the biggest favorites this week. They have the biggest implied team total this week. And of course, Puka Nacua is just really good at football. So it's hard to beat that combination. The stacking potential is interesting. Like I've seen plenty of drafts where you're right, Kyron and Devontae and even Matthew Stafford will go off the board in between the first and second pick here. But I I still think there's a chance that you're going to be able to get Stafford on the comeback should you want to go in that direction.
It's possible, or maybe a team in front of me doesn't want to let it happen. I try not to look at other teams. I think you should
Yes,
focus on your team
correct.
and put the best build together. But I have been in drafts where people were like, "Yeah, I'm not going to let that team build that stack." But hopefully, you just focus on your team and it does pan out. Look, if I already know, I'm already prepared. If that doesn't happen, then I'm going to have to go in a different direction. I have an idea of what I'm going to do, but again, any draft, whether it's season long, guillotine, you never know what could happen in a draft. You're always hit with some surprises. So you just have to be flexible and be prepared for a multitude of things.
Yeah, and I think to the point about playing defense, like if your ultimate goal is to try and win the grand prize, you can't be worried about what your league mates are doing, right? Like, yes, maybe you can prevent Ronis from building the Puka Nakua and Matthew Stafford stack, but there's probably going to be some other Ram stacks out there, and you're capping your own upside by not correlating your own team. So I'm with you. I almost don't pay attention to to what my league mates are doing. I want to make sure that I am giving my team the highest ceiling possible. And to that extent, right? I think that this is pretty standard for these contests. Like you really want to build around 2 or 3 teams, ideally in opposite conferences, so that if your sort of ideal scenario plays out, you have as close to a full lineup as possible heading into the Super Bowl. It would be hard for me to imagine somebody winning a big contest without having 5 guys in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean that's the ideal goal, and you hope that maybe one of those Super Bowl teams plays 4 games.
Yeah,
But any contest or any fantasy league, right? You need opportunity, you need players on the field. So in this scenario, the more games played, the better, and that's what makes it challenging because you're trying to predict it. And again, you might have a really strong stance on who the 2 Super Bowl teams are, and you're trying to stack those teams. Well, depending on where you pick, you're not going to be able to get those 2 teams, so you have to go in a different direction. Even if you feel like, well, I don't think this team's going to go, but maybe they're your second choice in the conference and you're just going to have to go heavy on them because again, I think spreading it out, it does not work.
yeah. If you have a strong feeling about one team, the answer is do enough drafts
Right.
until that team falls into your lap. You know, um, if you like the Rams and you like Puka Nakua, you're going to need to do drafts until you get the number 1 spot, pretty much.
Yeah, look, and that's the thing. If a draft doesn't fall your way, the good thing is you can do another. So we
Correct.
have some time. It's Friday here as we're doing this, and we have all the way up until Saturday afternoon. So make sure you get as many drafts in as possible to hit as many combinations as you think will lead to the Super Bowl.
All right. And with that, we are officially underway here. And there is Adam scooping up Puka Nakua as discussed. So I am in the 5th spot. We've also got a couple of other fantasy lifers in here. Matt Swing, producer extraordinaire, is picking from the 4 spot, and John Legeza, Big Johnny Stud, is picking down there at the turn at number 6. So I'm kind of in a fantasy life sandwich here, and I have been on streams all week. I've been writing articles all week. I feel like these guys kind of know what my game plan is going to be here. Um, but we'll see how things play out. At the 5 spot, I don't want to say at a disadvantage. Like I view their like as 4 clear-cut top fantasy options for this playoffs, right? Puka Nakua, who went first, Christian McCaffrey, who just came off the board, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who unfortunately is not going to get a first round game, but certainly has the potential to play 3 games if the Seahawks make the Super Bowl. And then I'm putting Saquon Barkley in that tier, even though he hasn't necessarily had the best season. So if one of those 4 makes it to me, that's kind of the direction I'm thinking with my first pick. And sure enough, that's going to happen as James Cook comes off the board, number 3.
Yeah,
No, sorry.
that's interesting because I 2 of the first 4 guys could be eliminated in round 1.
Yeah, James Cook was the 4th pick, and Matthew Stafford was the 3rd pick. So
I knew
so
he
much
wasn't
for
making it
me.
back. Yeah.
Me speaking your Ram stack into existence. That
Thanks
that
for
did not
ruining
work
it.
out.
Nah.
All right,
Well, yeah,
I've got
you're up
11
now,
seconds
so,
left here.
it's I'm assuming you have an easy decision based on what you were saying?
I'm going to take Saquon.
Okay.
I like the Eagles to win in round 1, and I like the option of potentially having him for uh 4 games as opposed to just 3 for JSN. I also kind of think that, oh, you know what? Now I might be able to get both, but I don't know. That just feels like,
It's so funny that that was done because I did that this morning with that John did, Drake May, Travion Henderson.
mhm,
I did that. And, like, I agree. Look, you believe in Barkley. If you believe in Philly, then that's the right pick. You
yes,
have to go with what your stance. Who cares about ADP?
yep,
It doesn't matter. You have to go with what you believe.
yes. And to that extent, I'm going to take AJ Brown here,
Yeah,
even though
that's smart. No,
I
it's
want to take Jackson Smith and Jigba, but
yeah.
there's no scenario where both of those guys make it to the end.
Yeah, no, it's smart. That's what you have to do, when I believe. And again, if you believe in Philly, you make that stance, and now you got their top running back, elite receiver, and then Swing did the same thing with
Yep.
Cook and Allen. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do here. Is you're making a stance, and again, you could look foolish. You could be out after this weekend or week 2, but that's just the way that you play these playoff formats. You have to
Ricky
do it.
Bobby, baby. If you ain't
Yeah.
first, you last.
No, it's so true. In these play I don't do that in the regular season, obviously. It's a completely different game. And even in some of the other contests we'll get to down the road, like Guillotines, obviously it's a lot different.
Yep.
But I've always said, always tell people, and they sometimes are like, it's so basic. Why you say that? Because you know how many people don't look at the league rules and the scoring? You'll be amazed. I've been in drafts where people are like, oh, what's the scoring? I'm like, you didn't look beforehand? You got to know. So in this format, what you guys did so far was very smart. Okay, so there goes Devontae Adams for me. So I think one pick is easy for me, and then I got to figure out what to do with the second pick. So I will go. I actually thought the Eagles might make it back. I thought I was going to go 2 Eagles, to be honest here. But I guess I will have to go with one is Kyron Williams, obviously, taking the 2 Rams there. And then where do I go in the other direction? I guess I will go. Um, all right. I'm gonna have to go since the one of the teams I thought would go to the Super Bowl was already kind of taken. I guess I'll have to go in this direction, and I will go with Travis Etienne.
But I would have considered if he made it back to me. Nico Collins comes off the board next. So yeah, we're starting to see now sort of I feel like that's kind of the way these drafts go is the NFC kind of dominates the early part. People want to get the exposure to the Rams and the Seahawks and the Eagles. And then sort of the next tier of AFC teams will start filtering in.
Yeah, Nico Collins, obviously, we know he's the go-to guy for the Texans, and if you believe the Texans can make a run, then it certainly makes sense, right? There's a chance that he could play 3 games, maybe 4, if you
Yep.
have them going to the Super Bowl. So, makes sense there.
All right. And it looks like RJ Harvey, pick number 3 of the 3rd round to Captain F. George Kittle goes to Matt Swing.
So that
So,
puts you on the clock. So you got your 2 Eagles.
yeah,
So
let's make it 3.
oh, wow, yeah, you know what? They let it fall to you so wow, it worked out very well for you.
Yeah, we'll take Jalen Hurts there for sure.
I thought about him. I did. I thought about him, but, I already made my stance with the Rams, so I didn't wanna take Philly because they can knock each other off, and then
Yep.
Diggs falls in the lap of John, makes sense, um, and then he goes Jacobs. But, yeah, I mean, that's a nice start with the New England trio he has with, Drake May, Travion Henderson, and Diggs, and then Jacobs. So I guess, he's gonna take a stance there on Green Bay.
Yeah. Now the question is, do I want to just go absolutely bananas with Philly? And I think the answer is no.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna pull the Dallas Goddard card.
Oh no. Well, that card might still come, but I was looking more at
Oh, Smith.
yeah,
Yeah,
DeAndre.
you could have done that too, yeah.
I'm gonna go with Cortland Sutton.
Okay.
I don't have a ton of Broncos exposure, and they're a team that I think I could potentially put together some pieces for down the stretch. Though that won't include RJ Harvey, who went off the board earlier.
Yeah, Denver has not been a popular pick at all. I mean, people are just not buying into them, from what I've seen, and they are the number 1 seed, but
Yeah,
we know they're
and
probably.
the betting favorites to make the Super Bowl from the AFC.
Yeah, and a lot of people just aren't buying it, and I can understand why.
Sure,
They won a lot of one possession games. They haven't dominated
absolutely.
anyone. All right, so I am up. I think this becomes an easy decision for me here. So I will take Trevor Lawrence to pair with ETN, and then I feel like now this is the tough one here.
Yeah, which Jaguars receiver do we like?
Yeah, I will go with. I'll go with Jacoby Myers. Yeah, I will go with Jacoby Myers. It's tough. It was between him and Parker Washington. I still like
Absolutely.
Brian Thomas too, but I mean, Washington has been one of the hottest receivers in the league the last 3 weeks: 19 catches, 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 29% target share. I think a lot of that was he's had favorable matchups in the slot. Jacoby Myers, leads the team in route rate and target share since he came over to
Yep.
Jacksonville. So, yeah, it's a tough call. Who would you have gone with?
Probably Jacoby Myers.
Okay.
I think he's the safest option of the trio. It definitely would not have been Brian Thomas. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah, I loved Brian Thomas going into the year, and I didn't get him in as many redraft leagues as I thought. Might have been one or two. I definitely took him in a lot of best ball, and I'm just stunned at how it fell apart for him. I know people pointed to prior to the season, a lot of his production came with Mac Jones. I just think he was dealing with injuries and then missed time due to injuries, and the connection with Trevor Lawrence wasn't there. The addition, though, of Jacoby Myers has kind of helped, and it's opened up opportunities for him downfield, but he's just not going to get the same target share. But it is stunning, at least in my opinion, how he went from looking like one of the best receivers in the game to just non-existent for a good portion of the season.
Yeah, I mean, historic rookie season, right? You're talking guys with 1,000+ receiving yards and 10+ receiving touchdowns. You can write it on like a napkin, and a large portion of them are Hall of Fame caliber talents. So, what happened to him this year is just kind of mind boggling. Uh,
So John got the New England stack falling into his lap. Drake May,
that is
Travion Henderson,
a monster
Diggs,
stack.
Stevenson, Hunter Henry with Josh Jacobs. So if New England does make the Super Bowl, I think we could just hand over the check right now to Big John there, because that's how you do it though. That's
Yep.
how you got to do it. You go all in. Hey, New England loses this weekend. John just donated us some money.
Yes, absolutely. It's very much a format designed around taking stances, and I'm going on the opposite side of that game. I guess I I kind of like the value with Omari and Hampton there at the end of round 5, so I started up a little Chargers stack with him and Lad McConkey. And they are underdogs certainly in round 1. I don't necessarily expect them to win, but they're only 3-point dogs, so it's not without it's not impossible that they advance for another round or two.
Yeah, I will continue the Jacksonville stack, and I will take Brian Thomas. Oh, wait, I could have. Now I got an interesting scenario here. I guess I will have to. You know what? Uh, yeah, that's right. You don't have to do that. You know what? I just got to lean into it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, and I'm like, do I take? But I already went in. But then All right, I'll just do it. I'll go Brenton Strange.
from time to time, from what I've heard.
Definitely. I definitely feel that way. Man, the only thing is I'm scared is Jacksonville could lose this weekend, but hey, got to take the chance
We're
at
taking
this point.
stances, baby.
Yeah. So
There goes
clearly,
Blake Corum. He was a player I thought you might think about there on the turn, but you're really not stacked on the Ram side. You just kind of have Puka as a one-off.
yeah, with Kyron. So it's
Oh, and
kind of
Kyron
two.
too.
Yeah, it's
Right. So
two.
yeah, a little negative correlation almost.
Yeah. So, if I get a Rams Jacksonville Super Bowl, I think I'll be in pretty good shape. Oh, would you have taken Goddard if he fell to you? Swing took him one pick before.
100% I was looking at him.
Yeah. I know you felt, and you mentioned earlier that you could wait a little bit and figured he would drop, especially since you don't have to start a tight end. It's a
Yes.
quarterback, one running back, two receivers, and a flex. So, oh yeah, there you go. It worked out with Herbert there. Now you got the Chargers side with Herbert, McConkey, Hampton there.
Yeah. Which again, it's not a team that I'm thrilled about, but sometimes you got to take what comes to you here.
Is anyone ever thrilled about your team when you're coming out of this? I don't think you can be.
Yeah, pretty much no. And since I've got the um the Chargers for, one side of my AFC, I'm going to bring in a second Denver piece even though I can't stack these guys with Bo Nix. At least it gives me two potential avenues in the AFC. If the Eagles make it to the Super Bowl and they're playing either the Broncos or the Chargers, I will at least have the opportunity to fill out a full lineup.
Yeah, no, that makes sense there. At least you got two players there. And Denver's not a popular team here either. So if Denver does get to the Super Bowl, you have two. I think no one else has more than one. Yeah, Bo Nix on one team. And Harvey went, but that's one team. So yeah, if Denver goes to the Super Bowl, you'd have at least two players from them. So that does give you a little bit of an advantage there.
Then it looks like Tedero and McMillan to swing. Just a one-off play. He might only be around for one game, but you hope it's a good game. He can get you a bunch of fantasy points in round one, and then you say thank you for your service, sir.
Yeah, so I need another quarterback, and I know ideally I'd want an NFC one, but I just don't like anyone there that could make a run. So I think this team can in the AFC. So I'm going to go with CJ Stroud. I know it kind of is not the best correlation with Trevor Lawrence there, but looking at what's left, I didn't want to take the NFC side. And then,
Right.
okay, let's see here. What would I do? You know what? Hmm. I'll take a guy who I think can get me a decent amount of points in round one. And that is yeah, I'll do it. I'll go with Kenneth Gainwell.
Yeah. Once you said that, I knew that's who it was going to be because that's been one of my guys. That's somebody that I certainly had my eye on for this upcoming pick. Kimani Vidal, another guy, just a little bit of Omari and Hampton insurance.
Yeah, Hampton has been on the injury report. He did say he was going to play, so that it does bear watching. Though there should be a little concern because he didn't practice Wednesday, limited Thursday. So I think that kind of makes sense. And of course, swing taking Caleb Williams. He's got to get a bear in
Got to
there.
get some bears, man. I would like to take another running back. I only have two, and as you mentioned, one of them's not even a guarantee to play this week. So I guess we'll go with Jalen Warren. I certainly prefer the Gainwell side of that committee, but Warren is the guy who's going to get the majority of the carries. And Buffalo, not Buffalo, they're not playing Buffalo. Houston, uh, yeah, that's a really tough matchup. So not ideal, but you know what? We needed a running back, and he was there.
Yeah, so now you're on the clock for your last pick here as John went heavy Green Bay. I mean, it worked out for him. He had his Green Bay, New England essentially. So if he gets that, then yeah, he's taking this down.
Yep.
And Green Bay's not a popular pick, obviously, as the 7th seed in the NFC. I do think they win this week, but if they win, they automatically go to Seattle, and that's challenging. And then yeah, with you, makes sense with Quentin Johnston. You already have several Chargers. So again, this is the blueprint. Whether you believe in these Super Bowl matchups or not, you have to take a stance. And the draft kind of dictates where you go.
Yep.
Oh, so all right. Well, then my decision was made easy because I was either going to go. I was thinking Tyler Higbee, so he went because I do think the Rams are going to go far. So now it makes sense for me to go with someone on the Texans. And now it comes down to Jaden Higgins or Schultz. Schultz seems to be so reliable. I will go
Hmm.
Schultz. So I'll take. I didn't want to take two tight ends. It wasn't part of the plan. But hey, look, if the Texans somehow make this run, I have two players from the Texans. I don't know. Does anyone else have multiple players from the Texans? Probably not. Nico Collins. No. Was it? Yeah. Woody Marks, was he drafted?
Had to have been.
Yes, he was. So the team that has Woody Marks has Nico Collins. Okay, so they have
Okay.
two players from the Texans. So I'd have to battle with them if they made the Super Bowl. And that was it, right? Yeah, no Jaden Higgins was available because I contemplated him. So yeah, I mean, I have the quarterback and the tight end. So if somehow the Texans get there, and maybe if the Texans Rams go, I think I have a good shot.
Yeah. So your team ended up being, like we said, Puka Nakua to start, brought it back with Kyron Williams, a little bit of mini Rams correlation there. Then you switched over to Jacksonville for four straight. ETN, Lawrence, Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas, five straight. Brenton Strange. Then a little Texans exposure with Stroud and Schultz, and a one off with Kenneth Gainwell. So yeah, I like that approach. I think, again, this is what these contests are about. You have to try and build a scenario in your head. And in your scenario, you're getting the Jaguars in the Super Bowl for sure, hopefully against the Rams, and a bunch of points along the way.
Yeah, that's the hope. And again, the more contests you do, the more different Super Bowl combos you have. So, like, I did
Yes.
one this morning, and my combination there was New England and Philly. So, uh, you have to go all in and take a stance. You saw a couple teams kind of spread it around. I don't think that approach works. Like what John did made a lot of sense. He
Hmm.
has New England, Green Bay. You have Philly and the Chargers, and I think that's the way to go. And people might go, "Well, that's not going to happen." Well, we don't know. You never know. I mean, I
If
know
there's a
we
year where it could happen, it might be this one.
exactly. This would be the year because when you spread it out, it's just you're going to get like half your team eliminated in round one. So that's typically the way I've done these drafts over the years. And if you get the right combo, you win. If you don't, hey, it's an early exit, and you look at your other entries.
Over to a different format now. We've got the postseason shootout, Fantasy Life postseason shootout, also available at RT Sports. And we're going to fill out a little lineup together. Now, the format here is a little bit different. You're starting two quarterbacks, two running backs, two wide receivers, two flexes, one kicker, and one defense. But the big catch is you can only have two players from any one given team. So while we were kind of talking about going all in the last contest we just did, this one, you're going to need to spread your exposure a little bit more. That doesn't mean that you're still not going to be stacking, right? But you're not going to be able to load up as heavily on any one particular team.
Yeah, so it does make it more challenging. And the other thing too, since this is a contest with a lot of entries, you don't want to have the chalkiest players either, right?
Right.
We know who the popular plays are going to be. So you can have a few, but I do think you want to try and be different a little bit somewhere and not take the obvious plays if you're trying to win this and take down the whole thing.
So before we start actually picking through the players here, do you have any specific thoughts on how to handle the kicker and the defense? Are you looking to, because in my mind, like a defense and a kicker in the Super Bowl, like could be valuable theoretically, but like, is that a position where you're trying to maximize your number of games played? Or is that a position where you're kind of just maybe going to look at a team that you think just has a really good defense?
Yeah, I'm looking at a team that has a really good defense and then might not have as many skill position players as we want, right?
Right.
So maybe Seattle is in the mix there, right? Because everyone, if they're going to take someone from Seattle, it's going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't think people are going to take Darnold. We know the running backs with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet have been a headache all year. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think Seattle's going to go to the Super Bowl, though, you take one of them. I don't think they'll be very popular. So I think Seattle's in the mix. I think the Texans are in the mix too. They have a really good defense. They're going to get Pittsburgh in week one. They have a chance to play 3 games, and they're another team too. When you look at them from a skill position player, Nico Collins is going to be very popular. After that, I mean, we don't have to start a tight end here. So Dalton
Yep.
Schultz. I don't think people are going to take Woody Marks. So I don't think people are going to take CJ Stroud. So you could look at them. And I guess Denver is another team too that you can look at for a defense. So yeah, like you can't, it could work. Like if you think the Rams are going to go to the Super Bowl, you could take them. But once you take them, now you're only allowed one out of Puka Nakua, Stafford,
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams. That's tough. That is a unique build, though. So, like, if you were doing like 10, 15 entries, maybe you do that for one. And then if the Rams do make it to the Super Bowl, they play 4 games, they have a week one matchup against Carolina. Now, again, I would only do that if I had a lot of entries. I don't think that's ideal.
So I'm going to let you get started here. And I think the best way to do this is you can pick a team, tell me which 2 players you want from that team, and then I will respond with a team from the other conference.
Okay. Let's start with the Rams
Okay. Pretty
and
logical
go.
starting point.
Do we go Puka because he's the chalk?
It's interesting. Yeah, Devontae Adams, I think, would be an interesting pivot.
Yeah,
Maybe you do Rams no Stafford. That I
you
think
can do
could be
that. Yeah.
somewhat contrarian. And if you go with Adams and Nakua, like their target share is so condensed between those 2 players, you're getting a large portion of the passing attack, anyways.
All right, let's do that
Okay,
because we do have 2 flex spots anyway that we can go in a different direction.
so we're gonna go with Puka and Devontae. I like that actually. All right, so on the AFC side, I have talked about Jacksonville, and I think they're going to be popular, but they're who I kind of want to pair with this Ram stack because I want to get Trevor Lawrence in there at quarterback.
Okay.
And then it gives us the opportunity to get a little bit creative with our second pick. We could look for the quarterback running back stack, which is not, typically what you would associate uh, as like a stacking purpose. But by getting Lawrence and pairing him with ETN, theoretically, we're going to get most of the passing and rushing production from Jacksonville. We could also look at, a guy like Parker Washington, who might be a little bit undervalued. So do you have a lean one way or the other there?
Yeah, that was the exact thought I had. It was either ETN or Parker Washington. ETN has a really good matchup in week one against Buffalo. And if
Yep.
they win, well, we don't know where they're going to go, but assuming New England wins, they would go to New England. So that's a solid matchup. I think let's do Parker Washington, though, because I
Okay.
think he will be lower owned in this contest, right? It'll be a lot of Lawrence, ETN, Jacoby Myers. So, yeah, I think Parker Washington. We could always pivot off this. Like if we find that we're clogging up one spot, then we could
Yes.
just pivot to a different position.
All right. I will now swing it back to you. And, both conferences, I think, are back open in play.
All right. I think I want to look at someone, I think, from Philly.
Okay.
So I guess it would come down to, I was going to say AJ Brown. He's popular. So I guess Barkley or Smith, or do you feel strongly about AJ Brown?
I kind of like Barkley,
Okay.
and
We can do that. Yeah. And we don't have a running back, too.
yeah, we need a running back.
Lane
And
Johnson's coming back to help the offensive line. This might be the healthiest the offensive line has been. They sat everyone week 18, so that could help. So, yeah, I like that. I think we could do Barkley there.
then, if you go with Hurts, that's a lot of touchdowns potentially for the Eagles, around the goal line. And it would give us an NFC quarterback to pair with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
But we could go, Devontae Smith. I'd be fine with that too. Or we could even, if you wanted to look at the defense, maybe. Obviously, the first round matchup against San Francisco is not ideal from a defensive standpoint, but San Fran still has the third lowest implied team total on the board this week.
Well, look, we want to get a quarterback from the NFC,
Yeah.
and we've already eliminated Stafford. So if
Yes.
we're not going to do Jalen Hurts, then where are we going? we don't want to go Darnold, right?
Nope.
Right. So, and I don't think we want to. I think it has to be Hurts by process of elimination,
Okay.
right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that assessment. All right. So now in the AFC, we could potentially just go with the Bills because that then gives us both ends of that Jacksonville Buffalo game. But I think ideally you want to have it so that you could theoretically get 8 players into the conference championship
Yeah.
games. So I'm gonna cross off Buffalo. I think New England would be popular specifically at running back. I think there's probably going to be a decent bit of Travion Henderson out there, but there might not be as much Ramondre Stevenson. And I kind of dig on Ramondre at this point. Like if you look at the utilization report, he is almost the guy that you want in that backfield. He gets the majority of the high value touchers. He's the better pass catcher, at least in terms of the usage out of the backfield. And he's got the edge in the short yardage opportunities. So Henderson is the better player. He's the more explosive player. He has the better outlook long term. But it wouldn't shock me if for this postseason, Stevenson ends up being the better back.
The only issue with that is if New England and Jacksonville win, they play each other.
Correct.
So that's
Okay.
the only issue with that one.
So let's scratch Ramondre then.
Okay, so then we'd have to go. Well, I guess we can't do any. Well, because we already have Barkley, we can't go Kyron. So we'd have to go.
We can go Texans. We
Yeah,
can go
Denver.
Broncos.
Yeah. Do we go RJ Harvey then?
Yeah. Okay. I kind of like RJ Harvey.
This is a unique build, though. I will tell you that.
Okay. Yeah, I like RJ Harvey. And I do think that the people that are using Denver are almost certainly going to be using their defense. So why don't we get a little weird and maybe use the kicker instead? How about Will Lutz?
Okay. Yeah, there we go.
They're still kicking in Mile High all postseason up until the Super Bowl. So maybe that can work out to our advantage. The kickers really feel like a pure dart throw.
Yeah. For defense, you want to go Seattle?
Works for me.
Okay. And then we need one flex, right?
One flex.
Uh,
And, the world is our oyster here, basically.
yeah. Well, okay. So we basically Philly Rams. I guess do we go JSN? Or you think
Eh,
too popular?
yeah. How would you feel about a piece from the Green Bay and Chicago game?
Okay, which piece would it be? I have Green
I'm
Bay
pretty
winning.
open
What do
there.
you have? What do you have? I have Green Bay winning.
Okay, that works for me. I think Josh Jacobs could be
Okay. Yeah.
interesting. He might not command the type of ownership you would expect just based on how shaky he was down the stretch.
Yeah, hey, look, he has said this is the best he's felt in a while. We have to hope he's telling the truth. He did get some time off recently. We know that they want to rely on him. When he has been healthy, they just give him a huge workload. So you're just hoping that he's telling the truth. And if they can win this week, they would have a tough matchup against Seattle. But look, this is a team that made a run a couple years ago and surprised us. So with basically the same quarterback in Jordan Love. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, look, we do think Seattle is someone that can be beaten, right? Sam Darnold throws a couple turnovers, it can happen. So, again, with these, we're trying to be different here. Like, it's easy to
Yes.
just go, all right, we're taking JSN, but a lot of people are going to do that. So you have to be a little bit different somewhere. Again, nothing crazy. It's not like we took a backup running back
Right.
or a third string receiver, but we're trying to tell a story here. And then with this, we're looking at the Rams, Jacksonville, Philly to make a run, and even potentially what was the other team? Seattle, right?
Denver too.
Denver,
Yeah,
Denver.
Denver. RJ Harvey and Will Lutz.
Yeah.
All right. So that will put a wrap on that contest. And that brings us to Guillotines, the fantasy life special contests, basically, that we are pumping out over there at Guillotine Leagues. And if you are somebody who does not love the idea of going all in on a certain team, these are the contests for you, because the big difference, the big tweak is that there's free agency after each round, right? So if you haven't played in a Guillotine League before, essentially how it works is there are a certain number of teams. So for the postseason contests, there's going to be 5 teams in a single chop league. At the end of the wild card round, the team with the lowest score gets chopped, and all of their players then return to the waiver wire. The 4 teams that are left are then able to make moves in free agency using blind bidding to pick up other players to fill in any of the holes that you have on your own roster. So it's a little bit more forgiving than some of these other contests where you're really just banking on finding a team and riding them all the way to the Super Bowl. My co-host on the Chop podcast, Brian Johnson, he said he had a team last year that advanced where he had 7 of his 8 players chopped. So I'm not saying that that's necessarily a great strategy if your goal is to win the whole thing, but you don't necessarily need to take such strong stances on teams when you're building out your lineups.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of these. I have a few more to do, including one tonight. It's a lot of fun. If you've never done the Guillotine League format yet, this is a good introduction, and then it'll give you the taste that you want to do one next year with the 18-week season. But yeah, I mean, because again, everyone I know that once they do it the first time, they're like, "Oh wow, this is cool," because it's a major sweat every week, and it's going to be the same thing this weekend. But yeah, 5 teams. So yeah, you don't need to worry about stacking teams. I mean, there was one format where I did come through with a few Rams. And again, if they make the Super Bowl, great. But you don't need to do the drastic measure like we did and we just showed in that RT Sports draft. You think the 49ers are going to lose this week, but you love George Kittle because he's the best tight end. You could take him early and don't have to worry about it. The other thing is, too, uh, so there's no bench. So I'm not taking a 0. I'm not drafting any Seattle or Denver players. Now, most of the drafts I've been in, I've seen Jackson Smith and Jigba drafted and no one else from those teams. I cannot do it because the margin for error is so thin here that I cannot go in with 8 players on a roster knowing I'm getting a 0. What happens if one of your other players gets hurt in the first quarter and leaves the game and gives you a 0-1? Now you got 2 guys. So I don't think you can do it. Now, it means, though, if you do advance next week, uh, and JSN gets chopped from a team or isn't drafted, you're going to have to spend a lot of money. But you worry about that week. The goal is to have the high floor this week and survive. The other thing that you want to do is if you don't take a quarterback early and all 4 teams have a quarterback through round 3 or 4, you don't need to take your quarterback to the last round. And I don't think a lot of people look at that. I did a draft the other day and 4 teams had a quarterback. And for me, Stafford was there. I was like, perfect. I will take Stafford in the last round because no one else could take a second quarterback. Same thing with tight ends, right? Even though I don't think the tight ends are going to go as high, it's just not a good tight end fantasy friendly playoffs. You'll see Kittle go maybe in the first 2 rounds, and maybe Colston Loveland goes. Yeah, so he's a guy that could go a little early, maybe Goddard, but for the most part, if you're not on one of those elite tight ends, you can wait. And then again, if you see 4 teams have a tight end through round 5 or 6, you can wait till the final round. So this is a draft that you do want to track what other teams have. Have that draft board open because again, the the lineup is fixed. There's no bench spots. You know what you have to draft. And it again, it is it's what two? It's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, and 2 flex spots. So I guess no, the tight end. Take it back. I'm wrong on that. You can flex the tight end. So you can't let that dictate what others have. But the quarterback, definitely. So if you do wait on quarterback, you see 4 teams have a quarterback, do not take that quarterback until the last round.
Yeah, lots of interesting strategy stuff. I have been waiting at quarterback till the last round in just about every draft I've done.
And this
And
and it makes sense this week. Look how many good quarterbacks we have.
yep, right. Like you've got obviously Josh Allen. He's the only one that routinely I see go with like a top 3 or 4 round pick. You've got Drake May, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, and Jalen Hurts, right?
Right.
Like those
So
5 guys, you're getting one of those 5 guys at a minimum. You could even throw, Caleb Williams in the mix, who I've seen get drafted a couple times. The one thing I wanted to throw out to you is this strategy that Brian Johnson, Matthew Friedman, and I have kind of coined as the bagel strategy. And essentially, it's built around Jackson Smith and Jigba. But one wrinkle with the drafting of these guys is that there is free agency on Sunday morning. Waivers will run on Sunday morning.
Okay.
So if you draft Jackson Smith and Jigba and you find yourself in a bad spot after the first wave of games on Saturday, you can just drop them and pick somebody else up and try and replace that zero in your lineup. If things are going well, like let's say you have, you know, Kyron Williams and he puts up a 30 burger, you feel a lot more comfortable holding that JSN zero in your lineup and trying to sneak through to the next round with him in there. So I don't know. Is that something that maybe makes you a little bit more open to the idea of drafting JSN?
That is very interesting. I was not aware of this
Mm.
Sunday morning, so I have to look at those rules a little further myself, as I was alluding at the top of the show. Because someone was asking me about that as their waivers before, and I was like, I don't think so. So I got to
Yeah,
find out
no,
what.
the only reason that this came up is because, I've been drafting Amari and Hampton in certain spots,
Mhm.
and I'm like, hey, if Hampton gets ruled out, am I going to have a chance to make a move or am I stuck with him? And you can make moves. There's free agency. As long as the draft is filled before the start of the playoffs, there will be a free agency run on Sunday. So, yeah, I thought that was an interesting wrinkle. And we've kind of just taken it and run from there. If you're
Where in that scenario, where were they suggesting to draft JSN? Like, was there a certain round or?
We kind of felt like the third round was the right answer.
Okay.
I was a little bit more on the conservative side. I kind of am hoping maybe more of a fourth round pick in a single shop league, but I've seen him go as early as the second round. So, yeah, it's interesting. You can also do the inverse, right? Like, let's say your team goes gangbusters on Saturday. Maybe you want to drop your last round pick and add a JSN if nobody drafted him in your league, or add an RJ Harvey to your bench. Like there are some interesting sort of moves you can kind of make with the free agency wrinkle.
Yeah, no, that definitely does open things up, and now it does give me an idea. I'm doing a draft with some friends tonight, and I don't know if they know all the intricacies of the guillotine format, so I might employ that there. I think I might do that. Yeah, and hopefully get past them. And then yeah, I guess the key is though you have to like because what if you have no one in the games on Saturday?
That's Yes, this is another thing we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
Brian Johnson, he likes the idea of loading your lineup up with Saturday guys if you're going
Hmm.
to try and go this route. Personally, I kind of like the idea more of letting my opponents draft the Saturday guys because then I'll know what their sort of outlook is looking like. Right. So I think you can make it work in either way. It just sort of depends on which avenue you want to go down.
Yeah, because the bottom line is someone is going to draft JSN. So in
Yes.
every draft I have done, he has went. And regardless, if he's available next week, he is going to cost so much money. And I could see someone spending 80, 90% of their budget,
Yep.
right? I mean, this is not like the season long format where you want to conserve a little bit. We
Agreed.
got 4 weeks here. You got to survive. And JSN, we know what a massive floor he has and a ceiling. I mean, they basically only throw to him. And if it is Green Bay, Seattle, it's a pretty good matchup there. He could go off. So that is definitely an interesting wrinkle. I like now it's making me think like, yeah, maybe I do need to take him in round if he's there in round 4.
And yeah, to one more thing on free agency. I am a huge proponent of saving your fab in the regular season guillotine leagues because as you get deeper into the playoffs, or deeper into the regular season, you're just gonna see better and better players keep popping up on the waiver wire. That is not the case in the postseason format, right? Like the player pool is only gonna get smaller as teams get eliminated. So I am with you. I really like the idea of being aggressive after round one because not only are you going to get the players from the chopped team, but you're also going to be adding in the two bye week teams into the mix who, outside of JSN, are going largely untouched in drafts. So it's the best opportunity, in my opinion, for you to get like an infusion of talent into your lineup.
Yeah, if you love strategy, this is the format
Yeah.
because there are just so many different ways to attack this. And like anything in life, the more experience you get, the better. So, I have done the guillotine leagues now a few years in a row, and I did something similar to it years ago. So it's so much fun. You really will sweat. Hopefully, those watching, listening, you guys are not going to be chopped this weekend. You've learned enough and you've been on fantasylife.com. You've read the articles. If you watch the live streams, you have all the information you need that hopefully you don't sweat. But it does make it so much fun and interesting to watch these playoff games because, especially if you don't have a team left in the playoffs that you root for, you want to have something on the line. I don't know how people watch games now. I'm a huge sports fan, so I can watch any game. But I gotta say, when I have fantasy, a bet on the line, it just makes the game so much more fun to watch. Like if try and watch a game where you have nothing invested, it's hard to stay focused, right? You kind of sway, you're looking at your phone, you're looking at the next bet you have. But when you have something invested in the game, your eyes are glued to that TV. And it's so much more fun.
I have a buddy who I went over to his house the other day and he had NASCAR on. And I'm like, what the heck are you watching NASCAR for? And he's like, oh, I got Ryan Truex to win or whatever. It's like you can bet anything's a little bit more fun when you got a little equity in there.
Yeah, look, I am not a big NASCAR guy at all, but if you remember during COVID, it was one of the few sports, and there
Yeah,
was a day that I put some money on it. I was watching NASCAR for 2 hours. I have never done that in my life. I haven't done it since, but hey, when you have some money invested in it, it becomes a little bit more interesting to watch.
absolutely. All right. That's going to do it for this episode here on the Fantasy Life YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. I had fun picking teams with my guy, Adam Ronis, who you can find on Twitter at Adam Ronis. I'm Matt LaMarca at Matt LaMarca. Good luck to all of you in the playoffs. I hope all your guillotine drafts go well, and we'll talk to you later. See ya.